Everything that you needed, don't you know I would've gave it. Put it down, whatever it takes. But I can't give too much. We went from every day, loving to never be late. Traveling in circles, stuck in place. Everything that you needed, gave it till I had nothing left.
Welcome to Lisbon.
We just got in last night, and we're going to be staying here for the weekend with one of our friends who's over there taking out the trash, actually. His name's Kyler. You're going to meet him because he's been living here for a few years now, and he's going to show us around a few different sites. You ready to go? Oh, this is Kyler, by the way.
Hello.
He's our tour guide and our hotel manager, concierge, everything. So he's going to be taking us where are we going first?
First, we're going to go get some brunch at Maria Food Hub in Azulejos neighborhood.
Azulejos. So we flew in yesterday, overnight flight from Singapore. We laid over for 6.5 hours in Zurich, Switzerland, because we took a Swiss Air flight. Once we got to Switzerland, we were dead tired. So the good thing is we went into one of the lounges and just relaxed for quite some time. And because Switzerland is it pronounced Schengen country? Schengen, because, thank you. Because Switzerland's a Schengen country and so is Portugal, we actually did passport control in Switzerland, which meant that as soon as we arrived in Lisbon, we actually didn't have to go through passport control. Then we took a Bolt, which is one of the rideshare companies here. Uber is the other popular one. To get to Kyler's neighborhood, it was about a 20-minute drive, and it was like 10 euros or less, so it was very reasonable. At the airport, they have signs that make it very clear, so it's easy enough to follow along. How do you say Lisbon in Portuguese?
Lisbon in Portuguese, Lisboa.
Lisboa. I'm so glad that Kyler speaks Portuguese. Actually, he speaks Spanish really well too.
I've lived in Lisbon for almost 3 years, but I've lived in Spain for almost 8 years before moving here.
We should mention how we know you.
Yeah. So we went to Holy Cross together, university, and met probably 12 years ago.
Oh my God, yeah.
A long time ago. They were in the same year as my sister. So I became friends with them before I even went to Holy Cross. They're like family to me. So.
And it's kind of cool that we're finally hanging out with Kyler outside of the U.S.
Yes, it's our first time.
It's weird, yeah, but this is awesome.
It's awesome.
And there's no growth in my state. And so whenever you call me.
All right, Kyler, talk to me about that thing back there.
So that's the eléctrico, or the tram trolley that's pretty famous here in Lisbon. This is the route called the 28 line, which is probably the most typical line because it goes through all of the main monuments in the neighborhoods of Alfama and Graça. So it's great for tourists to see things. However, it's very controversial here because the locals here get really frustrated with the tourists because a lot of the locals can't take the trolleys because a lot of tourists wait in line for like 2 hours to even get on one. Kind of frustrating, especially for the older people that live in these neighborhoods, which are very high up, which we'll probably see later. And there is like a tourist one. I think it's like 5 euros to go on it, or 10 maybe, and of course people don't want to pay that. So the tourist one is made for tourists that has like the audio thing, which I think would be great. So I really recommend if you come to Lisbon to take that one, or to at least take the 28 line at the other end in Estrela, where there's less people, where it starts, and you can take it there. But just be conscious of that when you're here.
And how much is this one that's not
I think it's around 2 or 3 euros, and you can pay in cash on the trolley. Or if you have a Metro card, I'm pretty sure it'll count for that as well. But I don't take it because there's so many tourists on it, so I never really take the trolley.
There's no other mode of transport to go up and down these hills?
There are some like funiculars that go up, and there's some escalators too because Lisbon is very hilly.
Oh, wow.
They also have small buses that go up there, but as we'll see if we go on the tour, like the streets are very small, so you can't really even drive like a big bus or a car. So in these neighborhoods, it's really just the trolley.
I think it's worth mentioning at first glance because I did grow up in California, really close to San Francisco. There's a lot of similarities here in terms of like the architecture, having the cable car. This city is very hilly. Once we drove in, I was like, oh my God, if we're gonna be walking around, we're gonna be super tired. But the weather is really nice. There's a breeze. It's because we're close to the water, is that
Yeah,
why?
we're close to the ocean.
I've noticed a lot of Lime scooters. What are people's sentiments about those?
I think they're the same sentiments as anywhere else in the world where people are frustrated. People just kind of park them there, but I wouldn't say a lot of locals take them. A lot of tourists will take them, so that's also a problem. A lot of tourists will come here and they'll ride them drunk.
Oh God.
Which I don't recommend. I've used it, a couple of times I would say, especially like in situations where I really needed to use it. So actually at the Taylor Swift concert here last month, we couldn't get a metro, couldn't get an Uber, so we actually had to take a scooter out of
That's
the
actually
stadium.
convenient.
Yeah, it worked in the end.
I guess time to walk away. 'Cause I like to love me too. Love me too. Love me too.
We're in Graça neighborhood. We just walked up that hill and we can see an overlook of the city. On the left here, you're going to see the Castelo de Saudade, an old Moorish castle that was taken in the Reconquista by the Portuguese. It became like a big symbol of Portugal taking back the Iberian Peninsula there. It's called St. George Castle because the longest political alliance in the world is with the English. And the English came here on the way to the Crusades to like practice. And St. George is the patron saint of England, so they named it after him, St. George. And then you can see over here down in that area is the Baixa District neighborhood, which we'll go there. But beyond that, you have the Christ the King, so Cristo Rei, which looks like Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro, and that's on purpose. It was constructed by the dictator Salazar. Portugal was neutral in World War II. And I think a lot of it is because they couldn't really fight in World War II after it was just a poor country. But he said that Jesus gave peace to the people. Here you go. Salazar might sound familiar as a name because of Salazar Slytherin. J.K. Rowling wrote the first Harry Potter book in Porto. Fun fact, she was dating or married, I think, to a Portuguese guy at the time. And she named the Salazar Slytherin after the dictator Salazar. And that bridge, which looks like the Golden Gate Bridge, was called the Salazar Bridge when it was constructed, and it connected Lisbon to the other side of the river. It was like a working class neighborhood, and they connected the city. When the 25th of April revolution happened, it's now called the 25 de Abril, which is the 25th of April bridge.
Significance?
I think it means something like savior or salvaging something.
Harry, do you have any idea?
I was gonna say salvation.
Neither.
Dang.
So saudade is a very Portuguese word that can't be, they say it can't be translated in other languages exactly. So to say I miss you is like tenho saudades tuas. Like I miss you. So you can use it as a word. It's basically to represent a feeling of longing or nostalgia for something that could have been, or things that, you know, like you think about Portuguese colonialism, a lot of people left Portugal and never came back. So you have saudade, it's like this feeling of nostalgia, also like reminiscing a lot of what could have happened if I went or if they stayed, what would happen. It's like actually the foundation, I would say, of fado music, which is the typical Portuguese music here that actually started in this neighborhood, really in Manteigaria, but also Alfama Graça. It's where it's founded, and it's kind of, they sing a lot about this topic. It's a very Portuguese thing, and Portuguese people are very nostalgic.
So we've passed a lot of tuk-tuks, which I thought was just a Southeast Asian thing, but apparently they're here.
It's easy to drive them around, I think, in these streets, as you'll see. They're very hard, and also just tourists. So controversial as well, because tuk-tuks park everywhere and kind of cause problems, but it is very common. And I recommend it if you have like any mobility issues. There's a lot of hills in the city, so I think it's a really good way that you can spend a half day doing that. And then, yeah, it's a good way to see everything without having to struggle, basically.
There. If my Spanish serves me well, this is the Church of Grace, because the word was iglesia, which is similar to Spanish, iglesia, graça, which is grace.
If you come to Lisbon, if you do any tour or anything, or just talk to anyone, I feel like the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 will come up in conversation. And then basically, it was like a turning point in Portuguese history. I would say it's kind of when the Portuguese Empire started to fall on November 1st, which in the Catholic holiday calendar is All Saints' Day. Imagine the city is celebrating their ancestors and putting out candles in all the churches and all the windows. An earthquake happened off the coast of Portugal, but it was very destructive. So imagine all of these candles falling everywhere. People at church, all these candles falling, the city goes on fire, basically. And of course, people are freaking out and obviously thinking that like God is punishing them, but they didn't realize that a tsunami was coming. So a tsunami also came after and wiped out the entire city.
Ouch.
So right now we're actually walking into Alfama neighborhood, which is one of the neighborhoods that was preserved because it's high up on the hill. So it's like one of the oldest parts of the city. Like a whole moment in European history, because that's kind of what sparked the Enlightenment movement. Was that like would God punish people to do this? And a lot of like Enlightenment thinkers, especially in France, used the earthquake as a turning point to like say their science and not God. You also might hear this guy's name a lot, Marquês de Pombal. The Marquês de Pombal was like the right-hand man of the king. The king fled the city and lived the rest of his life in tents. He like basically glamped outside the city because he was so scared of another earthquake. But then the Marquês de Pombal took over, rebuilt Lisbon, had his own architectural style, which you would see in the Baixa District neighborhood. It made buildings that were more sustainable in earthquakes. You're going to see a lot of Virgin Mary statues, which are of Our Lady of Fatima, which she is a Virgin Mary apparition. She appeared in Fatima, Portugal in 1917. She appeared to 3 shepherd children, Jacinta, Francisco, and Luzia, and they were very young. And on the May 13th, in the shepherd's field, there were shepherds, the Virgin Mary appeared to them. And she told them that basically she'd come back every 13th of the month, and she would reveal secrets to them. Some that were about Cold War, she told them one time that Jacinta and Francisco would die very young, and they died very young from a disease after it happened. But basically these kids were arrested by the Portuguese police.
Oh no.
Because they thought they're making stuff up and causing a whole riot. Virgin Mary said, tell people to come October 13th of that month, and I'll make the sun dance, basically. And people that went, and there's records of it, the sun was moving in the sky. And now Our Lady of Fatima is a big, big, big pilgrimage site for Catholics around the world. It also got really popularized when John Paul II was almost assassinated. It was on May 13th, I'm pretty sure. And he thanked Our Lady of Fatima for protecting him, so he was very close to that saint.
So is the 13th a unlucky day or not?
Unlucky day, yeah. Okay. Actually, I have it tattooed on my arm.
Tattoo?
Yeah.
Wait, show that again. This guy's got a tattoo now?
Of 13.
13?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was my grandmother's favorite number, and when she died, I saw it all over the place. So on May 13th, I got it tattooed on.
That's awesome.
Portuguese calçada.
Oh.
Calçada.
Okay.
Very typical like sidewalk tiles, and they are hand placed individually, and you'll see them a lot in like Brazil and in Macau, for example, will have them. This is a image of Amália Rodrigues, probably the first famous fado singer in the world. She brought that to the world stage in the 50s and 60s, 70s. She was huge in France. She actually was like had a love-hate relationship with a dictator. The dictator used her music as kind of propaganda to make like nationalism. There's a very famous song called Uma Casa Portuguesa, which talks about how a Portuguese house, you're going to be warm and happy, but like most people were poor during that time. But she was a pretty badass woman and kind of was a revolutionary in her time, smoked cigarettes, had multiple lovers. She was very liberal for the time. She is buried in the National Pantheon. Like she is a very iconic person in Portuguese history and culture. So she brought like a lot of Portuguese culture around the world. So this is the history of Lisbon, portrayed in like a comic strip. Ulysses, the legend, and like the Phoenicians came towards the 5th century before Christ. And you have the Romans coming, then we have like the Caliphate with the Moorish people living here. St. Vincent coming, 1773, the Spanish Armada, the massacre of the Jews in 1506, the Inquisition. You see the earthquake, the Marquês de Pombal, to the Napoleonic Wars, First Revolution.
I can't imagine having like food delivery and stuff like that, because like these are like residential and this is just a stairwell. This whole city is just super hilly.
Now we're in the neighborhood of Alfama. I would say this is like the coolest part of the city, because it's gonna feel like you're in a small town. The streets are very small, and they say the living room's the street, so people will like interact with each other on the street. It's very authentic, and it's also like very old and preserved. And you're gonna see a lot of decorations now, because in June in Lisbon we have the Festas de Santos Populares. Festas, like the festivals of the popular saints, because we have a lot of holidays in June, and the whole city celebrates a certain type of music called pimba music that people listen to. There's beer. We have sardines. I think I have sardines consumed every 13 seconds in the month of June in Portugal.
What? And I can smell something.
Sardines.
Is that sardines? I was like, it smells pretty decent. I'm not a fan of sardines per se. They're really healthy, but you can smell it. It smells like a port city. Ooh. What is it again, Kyler?
It's a cherry liqueur that you're supposed to use as a kind of a digestive, I'm pretty sure. You're supposed to sip it slowly. And it's a traditional shot that comes from Óbidos, which is a city north of Lisbon, but it's very common here, especially in Alfama, for women to make it themselves and sell it from their homes. So that lady was selling it from her house.
And it's called Ginja?
Ginja or Giginha. So Ginja, it's like the cherry referring to, and then Giginha is like little cherry.
Ain't no picking up where we left off. All the time I lost, now it's just gone. I cannot get that back.
Caracois.
Caracol, or caracois, or plural.
Chantal, what is snail in Spanish?
Caracole.
Oh, okay.
In Portugal, it's famous for their tiles on the wall, which comes from Moorish tradition. They're called Azulejos in Portuguese, and they're hand-painted. Most of these are, I would say, are hand-painted. Maybe the newer ones might be mass-produced or whatever, but traditionally they're hand-painted tiles. It helps keep the house cool, I'm pretty sure.
That makes sense. And it's interesting because it kind of looks like interior wallpaper, or it looks like a gift wrap on a house.
This is the Cathedral of Lisbon. It's very beautiful. It's worth going in. You can go to the top and see. It's not the prettiest cathedral I've seen in the world, but it's very old and survived the earthquake of 1755, so it's pretty symbolic of the city. So a lot of people think St. Anthony of Padua was Italian, because Padua is in Italy. He lived there for a lot of his life, but he was actually born right here. And this church is commemorating this birthplace of St. Anthony. He's the patron saint of Lisbon. So on June 13th, that's why the biggest night of the year is June 12th, the day of St. Anthony. He's also very known, like the patron saint of marriage. So actually, I think 13 couples get married on the night of St. Anthony. Wow. And a lot of couples who are going to get married will come to this church and pray for like a good marriage.
So we're in the low part of the city called Baixa, or like bottom, lower, basically. I was just saying that it's the only part of the city that's like a grid structure because it is newer than the rest of the city. Otherwise, the rest of Lisbon is like just windy roads all throughout the hills. Yeah, let's do it.
This is Rua Justa. It's probably the most touristy street in Lisbon. We don't come here often as locals, but it's a big walking street, a lot of restaurants, bars. And right now we're going to go to a place called Manteigaria, which is a chain. There's other places in Lisbon that have it, but I think they have one of the best Pastéis de Nata.
That's okay with me. Ooh, that's okay. We went from every day, loving to never be late. Driving in circles, stuck in place.
This whole thing was €5.
Cheers.
Enjoy. First one.
Oh, it's so sweet. It's got a very thick, sweet consistency. It's very good, but I can imagine you can't really eat too many of these a day. For like around €1 each, that's a really good price. So in Hong Kong, these are also super popular. And in fact, in Hong Kong, we call them Portuguese-style egg tarts. I think the difference is they use condensed milk and they torch the top, they flambe the top. So that's why you get that texture. It's more flaky, whereas the Hong Kong style is like more yolky and eggy and not as like sticky and goopy. This is the Praça de Comércio, or the Commerce Square. It's probably the main square in Lisbon, and like many European squares, it's huge and everything, but it doesn't have a fourth wall. So the fourth wall is the ocean. Historically, everything from the New World came through here. The King's Palace used to be over there, and he would watch everything come through.
Everything that you needed, gave you till I had nothing left. 'Cause I love you too much. Yeah. And there's no growth if I stay.
This is a very typical wine in Portugal. That's a type of wine, green wine, or vinho verde, which is like a young white, basically. It comes from the Douro River Valley, where port wine's from as well. It's just not as old. And it's very distinct, very refreshing. And this is my favorite, Suaedo. It's my favorite brand.
Suaedo.
A bit more expensive.
And so whenever you call me, yeah, I guess time to walk away. 'Cause I like to love me too.
So this is the famous Pink Street, which you've probably seen on all of our Instagram. It's kind of pink, it's kind of dirty, because this is a big party area, especially for tourists coming to visit. historically, this part of the city was where all the brothels were. Some of the bars actually are converted brothels to like bars or clubs. The men used to come here after they sailed the world and have their fun after.
Are there still brothels?
Not here, but there are in Lisbon. Fun fact, so during the festivals, this whole street is a party. This whole street is full of people just drinking the whole time. People open their doors and their windows to sell beer, sell the food. It's all right here. This neighborhood's Bica, but if you're going to go to the Festa Bica, it's here.
On this stairwell.
On the stairwell.
The sky's going blue, yay! Sun's coming out. All right, anything significant to tell us about the Parliament building?
To make a lot of decisions there that impact our lives. No, nothing really particular I can think of. This is the Basilica de Estrela. We're in Estrela, which is a neighborhood or area in Lisbon, which means star in Portuguese. It overlooks the Jardim de Estrela, which is like a very famous park that we're gonna go check out now. That has a lot of kiosks, so we get a drink, playgrounds, and just like some birds and stuff. It's nice, turtles. So we'll go check it out.
I couldn't film the inside, but we were just in the inside of the basilica, and it is beautiful.
So you can see over there, they're gonna do a circular line. They're changing the green line and making it into a bigger circle, which will make the city a lot more accessible, because right now there's only 3-4 lines, and they don't connect as well. It's gonna come at the end of the year, they say, but it's been delayed many times.
Took a lot to love me and to tell myself I'm worth it of the things I'm giving up. And there's no such thing exactly. If anything, I'm lucky.
So Kyler, you're saying you live somewhere around this
beyond
area,
that hill, on the other side of the hill.
and then we walked over here, made it to that church thing, saw the castle on that side, went down to the water, came back across, and now we're on this side. So we've done a lot of walking.
We're at like the Calçada da Glória and the Elevador da Glória. It's a famous trolley you can take up the hill, and I think this is probably the worst hill to walk up in all of Lisbon. It's very steep and slippery, so if you don't have the right shoes, I would not come up here. Basically, wear the good shoes. This is called Largo do Carmo. It's a very historically important square for 2 reasons. I think one is right here in this building. It's where the Guardia Nacional, I think, was during the takeover of the coup d'etat. April 25th, 1974. We had a peaceful retaking of power. Salazar had died, they had another dictator, so the people got together and they planned a coup d'etat that was going to be peaceful. So there's like 2 songs, one played at midnight, but the main song, I think it played around like 1 or 2 in the morning. Grande Vila Morena, which is the anthem of the revolution. That song played on national radio, and people knew to leave their houses, the soldiers knew to leave their houses and come here. And in this square, it's called the Carnation Revolution because there was guns and a woman started putting carnations into the bullet holes and not one bullet was shot. And also here we have the Cathedral of Carmo, which we're gonna go check out now. It's a cathedral, the main cathedral. People talk about the earthquake. This got destroyed in the earthquake, but they never rebuilt it. So we're gonna see the arches and everything, but it's all empty. Now we are right near the Largo do Carmo. We're on the other side, and we're looking at the Elevador de Santa Justa, which is a very famous monument here in Lisbon. The pro tip is, honestly, it's not worth waiting in line. Please do not wait in line. I think it's the stupidest thing you probably could do because you're paying €5 to go up for 2 seconds. And we just walked, if you can see over here, near the cathedral, up the stairs, and you have the same view. Maybe you're not at the tip top, but there's plenty of other rooftops or lookouts in Lisbon that you can check things out there. But it's beautiful, so definitely come by and look at it. Right now, we're in this complex of restaurants that's run by José Avillez. It's like, I think one of the only Michelin star chefs in Portugal.
He's the owner and chef of El Canto, by the way. It's a number 31 in the world's 50 best restaurants. So yes, it's a very big deal. He's a very famous chef.
He's a big deal. And now he has this complex and they have different restaurants within it. So they have like a mini bar, which is like a speakeasy, really, really cool. They do like a burlesque kind of show as well. Oh. And then a pizzeria upstairs. This is like a very traditional Portuguese restaurant with like Portuguese dish, but obviously a bit more elevated. Really cool if you want to have the experience of like El Canto without having to go to El Canto and paying a lot of money.
Normally we would go to a 50 best restaurant anytime we're traveling. We decided to stay within budget this time. El Canto, I think the prefix menu was around 350 euros. This is going to be significantly less than that, and I'm sure the food will taste just as good. So we ordered a couple starters. We had this shrimp cocktail thing that was like in a lettuce wrap, a lot of mayo and apple, very sweet. Then we also got a tuna tartare, very Japanese. It has soy. You can taste the soy glaze, really good. We now have the grilled octopus, which looks delicious. It's huge. And also chicken piri-piri is how you pronounce it. Piri-piri, which I feel like we always say peri-peri. But Chantal and I have this restaurant that's a chain. I think it's global, right? But it's in Singapore. It's called Nando's, and we like their chicken piri-piri. And this is like actual piri-piri, so we got to see and compare if it's authentic. At Kyler's home now after a really good meal. Too much food. It was so much food. But overall, very reasonable price. It was like 111, 115 euros around there for the three of us, and that included a 7.5% gratuity. So good night. It was a lot of walking. Kyler says that tomorrow is gonna be a little bit more laid back. My legs are definitely gonna need it.